Well, James, the oldest statue in the world, believed to be, is 11,000 years old. That's the Shigear idol, which in 1890 was discovered in Siberia, of all places. So I guess you have to be in Siberia to have your statue not torn down by some lunatic or other. But what we've seen recently is nothing new. It's repeated throughout history, and it always seems to be associated with periods of deep political unrest, when regimes are changing, when old power forces are tumbling and new ones are coming in. How worried, James, should we be about the iconoclasm, which is tearing down of statues, that we are seeing now?
I think we should be worried about the forces that are driving it more than we should actually be worried about the actual statues themselves. Now, that's not saying that any of this statue tearing down business, any of this iconoclasm, any of this vandalism is good, but I think what we need to do is understand exactly why it's happening, to understand what these people are trying to achieve. And, you know, there's a very long history. I'm glad you mentioned that, that ancient idol there, because this goes back to anthropology, and this also goes back to religion. You know, the whole idea of these statues, these icons, they're an idea that they define the physical space that a culture lives in, and that these are the people and personas that are worthy of worship. You know, the Romans had their pantheon, where they had the pantheon of gods that were all the worthy gods there that they were supposed to, you know, look up to and worship and glorify. But this idea of tearing down statues today, I think it goes back to something a bit more recent in history. I think that a lot of it goes back to the Protestant Reformation. I think it goes back to the iconoclasm, which you saw, you know, in Henry VIII's time, when Catholic churches, for example, were whitewashed in the name of, you know, removing icons that could have been distracting to the faith, in that sort of Protestant strain of history. And it's about, I think one of the things that people miss in all of this, and especially our secular media, is that religion actually, and religious impulses, even if they're not explicitly stated as such, have a huge force on people, and that you can define a lot of what's been happening in countries like the US, the UK, and also to some extent here in Australia by this kind of almost Protestant sort of attempt to remake and purify. The word Puritan, I think, looms large here, and we've often talked about the similarities between the new woke religion and the old Puritan religion, and I think we're seeing that again here at work today. Somebody has noted recently that, you know, you do not see this kind of iconoclasm in countries like France, which has a great tradition of revolution lately, or you wouldn't see it in Catholic Poland or Italy the same way you see it here, and that this comes from that particular Protestant strain in sort of Anglo-Saxon countries, and that might be what's driving it today. Now, the revolutionary impulses that go after that, well, those are some real sinister year zero mentalities, because what they really want to do is take down every single pillar of our society and rebuild it with something new. And we've seen time and time again, from the French Revolution to the Russian Revolution to Cambodia, Mao's China, everywhere else, that it only ends in tears. That's what we need to be worried about. The statues are just a symptom.
Yeah, Rita, the British art critic Alexander Adams defines iconoclasm as a warning that the protection of law and social conventions no longer apply, and that the cause, whatever that cause may be, will be promoted through physical force if necessary. So it's almost a symbol. Here we go, we're getting physical now, we're going to become militant and aggressive, and it's no longer an academic argument, it's a call to arms. We're going to tear down the statue. Once we tear down the statue, the logical next step is to tear down those individuals behind the statue. So, Rita, to what extent do you feel threatened, as it were, by the anger of the mob in tearing down a statue? How long before they start tearing down lives?
Well, they're already doing that as best they can, and they want to abolish capitalism. They want to dismantle Western society. This is very much an anti-West agenda that these woke simpletons are pushing, and of course I will feel threatened by that as someone who's a beneficiary of living in the West and being a beneficiary of the freedoms and the opportunities it represents. The alternative is frightening, and I've lived in the alternative for a few years, and any hints of that are just terrifying. So, but I blame our education system. I blame generations of kids who haven't learnt history, who've been indoctrinated with this neo-Marxist nonsense, and they can't think. And this is what they genuinely believe will make the world a better place, abolishing capitalism and instituting some Marxist socialist utopia. And, you know, if you just do a little bit of reading, you realise that always ends in tears.